Welcome to the Butterfly Effect. I'm Chris Horner. This is stage 5 of the Vuelta a España. Just under 190 kilometers, about 115 miles in length, and 5 categorized climb on today's stage 5. Now, the 2 climbs you really want to pay attention to come at the end because there's one circuit of just under 30 kilometers, about 28 kilometers in length. And the climb, Alto del Viero, that climb is about just under 4 or 5 kilometers and just under 8%. So it's a really hard climb, and it's just under 5 kilometers. It's going to summit with about 14 kilometers to go. Then it's all downhill as you go into Bilbao. Now, today's stage, it's going to be incredibly aggressive. There's going to be riders all over the place for the first 70, 80 kilometers of the race. And then all of a sudden, the cameras are going to come on with about 94 kilometers to go. And there's going to be a breakaway of riders up the road. We'll call it 17 riders somewhere up the road, and they're all kind of coming together up there. And then we're going to see it's Jumbo-Visma on the front shortly after the cameras are on. And then Marc Soler, UAE Team Emirates, he's going to throw in a big attack trying to go across to that group of 17 riders up the road, and it's about a 2-minute gap from Marc Soler. Now the UAE Team Emirates rider, he's putting on a display of force here as he's trying to bridge across to that group up front. Jumbo-Visma don't care, and they're going to let Marc Soler go. Only other threats up the road is going to be Rudy Millard from FDJ, and then there's going to be Fred Wright from Bahrain Victorious. Rudy is 58 seconds on the general classification, but Fred Wright's 1 minute and 2 seconds, so he's only 4 seconds behind Rudy Millard on today's stage when it starts. Now we go back to Marc Soler, who's still drilling it, trying to make it across. And all of a sudden, you're going to see a little Solerism because he sees right up in front of him. It's Alessandro Di Marche. He was in the break yesterday, rides for Israel Premier Tech, and he's getting a sticky bottle from his team. We saw the team car Israel Premier Tech pass Marc Soler, and then when it went up there to Alessandro Di Marche with that sticky bottle, now we go back to Marc Soler. You see him throwing his hands up in the air. He's having a fit because he's bridging across this 2-minute gap solo all on his own while Alessandro Di Marche is getting a little help. Now, on top of that, Soler gets in the cars there just like Alessandro Di Marche is. But when we look again up there at the Israel Premier Tech rider, now he's getting his bike adjusted and getting probably a little bit of help from the team car to recover. Then he'll bridge across up to that final group up front. And Marc Soler will go across too, closing that 2-minute gap, making 18 riders in that front group. Riders to pay attention to, of course, like I said, Rudy Millard. He's the highest on the general classification at 58 seconds. Back from Primoz Roglic, Jumbo-Visma's red race leader's jersey here on stage 5 of the Vuelta a España. And of course, Fred Wright is there, and Fred Wright with no teammates at all. You know he's going to be in a little bit of predicament here throughout this stage 5. But Rudy Millard does have one teammate in the form of Jake Stewart. Now, Stewart's a little bit more of a sprinter, bigger guy, kind of built and much taller and a little more bulkier than, of course, Rudy Millard. But Rudy Millard, not a bad climber, gone top 20 in general classifications at Grand Tours in the past. But this is the right combination if you're Jumbo-Visma to let a group like this go up the road because there's nobody else really a threat for general classification when we're talking about winning the Vuelta a España at the end of this 3-week race. Now, talking about taking the race leader's jersey, that's highly possible at this point in time, and that's what Jumbo-Visma is going to let happen. Now, before we get any further into the race, I want to go a little bit back to the beginning, the very beginning before this race even started, because there was a couple interviews and some talking done by the GCN commentators, Carlton Kirby. We'd seen an interview, of course, with Mads Pedersen, who's gone 3 times second place on these stages here at the Vuelta a España. And Carlton Kirby brings up the story that maybe if we're talking Mads Pedersen, if Trek Segafredo had a better lead-out train for Mads Pedersen, it might be possible to see Mads Pedersen win some of these sprints if the train was a bit better. Now, that is completely wrong and insulting. I love Carlton Kirby, does an amazing job, probably one of the best in the business for calling the last 1K and keeping us entertained throughout our time on the couch while we're watching bike races. But this is a little bit too far off Carlton Kirby because Trek Segafredo have done amazing leadouts and you're selling their train short. All it is Mads Pedersen's not a pure sprinter when you back him up next to the big sprinters like Sam Bennett, Tim Miller, and of course the other guys, Mark Cavendish, Philipsen, all those guys. But Trek Segafredo, when you're talking about Jasper Stuyvens, he has done amazing leadouts, Paris-Nice, the classics, the one-day races, all kinds of times he's done amazing leadouts. Now Jasper's not here, but when we look at Alex Kirsch, his leadouts for Mads Pedersen have been spot on and perfect to every degree that I can point out here on the butterfly effect. So when we're sitting on the couch, don't believe Carlton Kirby when he talks about Mads Pedersen possibly needing a better lead out and then all of a sudden he'd be able to win races. Now, let's get back up to the racing because as I told you, there's 18 guys up there and the gap is starting to go up as it's up to about 5 minutes on the Jumbo-Visma train behind. We come into the final 50 kilometers to go, and that's when the two KOMs really start proper. First one starting at about 47 kilometers to go, and that's when we're going to see Larson Craddock from Bike Exchange throw an attack, and he's trying to go solo up the road. Now, he's got one problem because the guy behind him coming up, Burgos BH, Victor Langenlati, he's done a fabulous job throughout this stage 5 of stealing KOMs at just about every opportunity he can. Now he's in the KOM jersey at the end of today's stage. He'll catch Larson Craddock. They'll go over the top of the KOM there together with Victor getting second place points. So he'll wrap up that KOM jersey at the end of today's stage 5. Now going down the backside, all of a sudden we start seeing the group behind that was originally 18 riders getting a little bit smaller because it's going to be about 10 guys that'll catch back up to Larson Craddock and Victor Langenlati. Now with that group of now about a dozen riders, all of a sudden they're going to start seeing attacks left and right, and it's going to be the Bahrain victorious Fred Wright now that has to go to work. I mean, he's going to get abused on this whole last lap as we're chasing down the descent, closing gaps left and right. They're going to cross the finish line with about a 5-minute gap on the peloton, and I'd take you back to the peloton, but nothing's happening back there, and nothing will happen back there for the whole time for this last 100 kilometers of the race. Now, as we get back up to the action, it's 28 kilometers to go, and they just crossed the finish line of today's stage 5. With 25 kilometers to go, it's time for Marc Soler to go to work for UAE Team Emirates. He throws in his second big attack here on stage 5. His first one was bridge and cross, that 2-minute gap to this group of 17, and now this is his second big attack. I'd like to tell you what happened, but the cameras went to the Guggenheim. It's a famous museum here in Bilbao, and now when the cameras come back, we see it's Soler's caught, and then the next attack's going to be Jake Stewart from FDJ. Let me remind you, he's the teammate of Rudy Mullard, who is, of course, the virtual race leader here on stage 5. Now they got the final climb starting with about 18 kilometers, 19 kilometers to go on today's stage. Like I said, just under 5% at just under 5 kilometers at just about 8%. This is a monster of a climb. Jake Stewart, like I said, not a big climber, but he's giving everything he can on the pedals. He's got a gap of about 30 seconds when the climb starts, and it gets up to about 45 seconds within the first kilometer or two. Then behind, we start seeing attacks. Comes in the form of Roger Adriere from Kern Farmer. With that attack, all of a sudden, we start seeing Marc Soler going out the back of the group. Doesn't look like he has much of a shot of winning here on stage 5 of the Vuelta a España. And up front doing most of the chasing is Bahrain victorious Fred Wright trying to close this gap. Remember, if he can get up here and win the stage with the time bonus, he can take the race leader's red jersey at this point in time on stage 5. But remember, Rudy Mullard is the virtual GC favorite in this group, and he is locked on to Bahrain victorious Fred Wright's wheel. Doesn't want to lose any kind of space whatsoever if he wants that red leader's race jersey here at the Vuelta a España. Now, with the effort from Fred Wright, this pace slowed down just a little bit as they brought back the Kern Farmer rider, and then Marc Soler's back on the back of the group here, and then it's not going to take the UAE Team Emirates rider too long to throw in his attack. When he does, he's got a 30-second gap to bridge up to Jake Stewart, the FDJ rider that's still riding solo up this final KOM climb on stage 5. With that in mind, as Soler is throwing down a big attack, and let me remind you guys, he closed the 2-minute gap to come across to this group that was originally 17 riders. Now he's just got to go across to Jake Stewart, but let me remind you, he's already gotten dropped on this climb, and I already threw him out of any chance of winning today's stage. Now he's going solo across his gap. Doesn't take him too long. He'll catch with 1.2 kilometers to go from the summit, and when he does, he flies right past Jake Stewart, the FDJ rider, to go over the top of the KOM with about 11-second advantage on the Bahrain victorious Fred Wright group behind that's trying to bring back the leader up front so he can win today's stage. Now behind them is two other riders that came off the back. It's Jake Stewart and Larson Craddock chasing the two guys behind, chasing 4 in front, chasing 1 Marc Soler up the front. As they're coming down the descent, the time gap starts to get a little bit narrower and narrower as the gap gets down to 6, 7, 8 seconds, always dropping from that 11 seconds at the top. And then with about 7 kilometers to go, that's when we see Larson Craddock and the FDJ rider Jake Stewart get back on. Now this is kind of money right here if you're Marc Soler up front, because now you got 2 FDJ riders sitting in that group of 6 back there, and they're not going to want to pull back the UAE team member as Soler, because there's time bonuses on the line here on stage 5. Now, one other thing that the cameras missed at the top of the climb there was bonus seconds available at the top of the KOM, and second place at the KOM was Rudy Mullard, who got second place time bonuses, which gives him 2 seconds more. That means at this point in time, he's got a 6-second advantage over Fred Wright. Now, Fred Wright's getting abused going down this descent as much as you can get abused for the Bahrain victorious rider, because FDJ, they'll rotate through a couple times here or there, but in general, not at all. And then all of a sudden, Jake Stewart legs cramp up just under 7 kilometers to go, but with about 6 kilometers to go, the group from behind, another 4 guys chasing, they're going to catch back onto this front group of 5. Now it's going to make 9, and if you look at the picture when they're catching, all of a sudden Soler's right there. We'll call it 4, maybe 5 seconds, but it might even be closer than that. And you got some speed back there because Nicholas Arndt from DSM has found his way back on, and Daryl Empey, who loves racing in the Basque Country, he's found his way back on too, and he's got a lot of speed. That means Bahrain victorious Fred Wright, he's in trouble now, because now there's faster guys here that can win today's stage. But there could be some help here to close the gap up to Marc Soler. So it's a double-edged sword depending on how you want to look at it. Marc Soler, he's doing everything he can, throwing down as hard as he can on the pedals. And the group behind us, they're still on the descent. We start seeing some attacks from Fausto Masnada. He's got company with one other rider in the form of Lawson Craddock as he's trying to bridge the gap up to Soler, but he still can't close it. Now behind Fred Wright, still doing all the gap closing back there as he's getting attacked left and right. We come under 1K to go. You look in the picture, you can see Marc Soler still got a gap that maybe he could win the race, maybe he won't, but if they start working behind, he's not going to win. Then we're going to see one more attack by the rider. It looks like it's the Astana rider Pronsky up there throwing in a big dig. Looks like he's just about ready to close the gap to Marc Soler, but Soler still throwing in 100%. Fred Wright's on the wheel there of Pronsky, and then once Pronsky's done working, all of a sudden the group falls apart back there. We're talking about 800 meters to go. Soler still got a shot. Now, all of a sudden, with 400 meters to go, we'll see as Soler comes out of that corner, he's just got a small gap, and on the front, who is it? It's Fred Wright from Bahrain victorious that's leading out the sprint from behind. 250 meters to go. Soler's going to get out of the saddle and give one more big sprint, and then he's going to look back and realize he's going to win stage 5 of the Vuelta a España here. Fabulous job from Marc Soler to suffer so much throughout today's stage. Remember, he bridged across 2 minutes, got dropped a couple times on the climbs, found his way back through an attack with under 25 kilometers to go, got dropped on the next climb, through an attack when he got back on, has been solo for over 15 kilometers on today's stage. So well-deserved victory for Marc Soler. Now behind, we still got the race leader's red jersey to decide here, because the gap at over 5 minutes to the Jumbo-Visma-led peloton behind means that Rudy Mullard from FDJ has a shot at putting on the red race leader's jersey at the end of today's stage. Or will it be Bahrain victorious as Fred Wright? Fred Wright was leading out the sprint, but guess what? Is Daryl Empey that came through for second on the stage. Fred Wright, amazingly enough, even doing all the work that he did on this last 30, 40, or 45 kilometers of today's stage, he still gets third on the stage, grabs 4-second time bonuses, and Rudy Mullard finishes 4th on the stage with no time bonuses. But he got 2-second time bonuses at the top of that last KOM. So that gets him the race leader's red jersey here after stage 5 of the Vuelta a España. Now, FDJ did a fabulous job. Jake Stewart did a ton of work in today's stage, so it's well earned. When you look at the interview from Rudy Mullard, he's well excited and brings up your spirits as you're sitting on the couch. Then you look at the interview from Fred Wright and it brings your spirits down, and that's what's so amazing about sports. You can see how dejected Fred Wright is about losing an opportunity of a chance of winning a stage here at the Vuelta a España or taking the race leader's red jersey. Well, he didn't walk away completely empty-handed because he got third on the stage, and he's wearing the white race leader's jersey for the youth competition here at the Vuelta a España. And let me remind you guys, he's only 2 seconds down on the general classification. And we got a summit finish on tomorrow's stage 6. So maybe Fred Wright, who seems to be climbing quite good, of course, Rudy Mullard is a bit of a climber too himself because he's gone top 20 in the general classification. But maybe if the FDJ rider has a bad stage 6 tomorrow on the finish of that KOM, maybe, just possibly, Bahrain victorious Fred Wright can get himself into that race leader's red jersey. But when you watch both of those interviews and you see the smile on one rider's face, Rudy Mullard, and then you look at the disappointment on Fred Wright's. That's what sport's all about, bringing you up highs and bringing you down lows, and that's why we love it so much. One other person that's on a high has to be the Director Sportif, Machine Fernandez from UAE Team Emirates. Now, this is a fabulous director. I've worked with him many times throughout my career. I worked with him with Sonia Duval in 2005 and then worked with him again with Lamprey in 2014, and they don't get any better directors. He loves his riders, and you can tell how emotional he is after the stage when he's given his interview talking about the win of Marc Soler and how much effort they put into making today's stage win happen. This is what it's all about. When the team starts to gel, family and the directors really lead the team in the right direction and keep the chemistry in the right place. There is no better guy to do chemistry than Machine, in my personal opinion. He was a fabulous director to work for. Congratulations, Machine. This is a great victory here for Marc Soler and well-deserved for UAE Team Emirates. Now, tomorrow's stage, going to be another big one because, of course, like I said, there's a summit finish on the stage, so it should be a big GC battle and possibly another stage for the breakaway riders to go all the way to the line. But, you know, FDJ should want to keep everybody in check and have a chance at keeping this red race leader's jersey here at the Vuelta España. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. I'll see you on tomorrow's Stage 6 of the Vuelta España.